Hi people, it's Archivist here, coming at you with the weekly roundup, where I cover 3 recent gaming stories. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the PC release of Assassin's Creed Rogue, which follows the story of Shay, who's an assassin that turns into a Templar. And you're not really just playing as a bad guy, there are genuine reasons for why Shay decides to become a Templar, and you do feel for him. In fact, if we were put into his shoes directly, you'd probably choose to do what he does. I mean, the assassins do some questionable things at the start of this game. And it's got an interesting story. It's slightly different to what we're used to, but it does follow a similar formula. Sadly, those stupid modern day sections are still in it. I hate those with a passion. I'm so glad when they're over. They really just disrupt the gameplay for me, but the actual core experience is good. If I was to describe what Rogue feels like, it's almost as if it's a standalone expansion to Assassin's Creed for Black Flag, because it uses many of the same mechanics. There's a strong focus on naval combat or just sailing off in the seas, and it does introduce some new things. There's actually a really cool mechanic where you've got these almost NPC assassins that hunt you and you have to be on the lookout for them. That's a really subtle but cool addition because it means that you can be pounced on too and you have to keep an eye out for them. You can counter their attacks, but it's not always so easy. And this game does bring things to the franchise, and not just gimmicks, genuine improvements. And this is the best thing, because we're talking, of course, about the PC release here. Now, the graphics. Very interesting thing with the graphics here. In terms of just the visual quality, they are slightly below Black Flag. Things like the water effects, the vegetation aren't quite as realistic. Also, there's a bit more pop-in, but as a result, this game runs extremely well. And I can't remember the last time I played an Ubisoft game that ran well. I mean, this thing isn't just well optimized, it's crazy. I mean, I can get this to 1440p, 60 frames per second, max settings, no problem. No drops at all. And I've looked around because, different kinds of hardware, everyone's saying the same thing. It's like an Ubisoft game that's well optimized. Of course, the slightly lowered graphics on the whole are the result of that, but they're not bad. In fact, I'd say it's just slightly more simplistic than Black Flag. It doesn't look ugly at all. I mean, you'd want to say that Unity, graphically, forgetting the technical issues, graphically is better, but you know what? I think in some ways, Rogue looks better than Unity. I remember one thing to do with the textures on Unity. They looked really blurry and ugly, especially on the main character who I think it's Arno. I don't know, I don't want to finish that game, it was rubbish, but they didn't look right. But here the texture detail on your clothing is actually really well detailed. The cities look decent, the ocean looks decent. It's not the most visually impressive game ever made, and it's not the best looking Assassin's Creed game ever made, but I don't think people are going to complain about the visuals. It rides that line. It's not impressive, but it's up to standard, if that makes sense, and you get good performance. I mean, if it looked like this and it performed badly, I'd be all against it, but it performs really well, so there's that. I'm focusing a lot on the performance here, but hey, this is the PC release. We've had Rogue since last year on the last-gen consoles, so people who do know about Rogue already. The combat system is pretty much the same as Black Flag again, and I have no problems with that. I think it's really good. It's the combat system that's been used since Assassin's Creed 3, I believe. Actually, I really dislike the one used in Unity. God, I really did not like Unity at all. The more I think about it, the more I realise how bad it was. And it's just, this feels... I think what I would have preferred them to do, they should have just forgotten about Unity. But I mean, that's failed anyway. They should have forgotten about doing Unity and just focused on making Rogue a really good game. Because I can see some areas where it could have been improved. They're not flaws, but it's just room for improvement, if you know what I mean. Making it up to the same graphical standard as Black Flag, maybe adding more features, making the cities just that little bit bigger. I think they should have focused on one game rather than splitting into two. But that's just my opinion. You may think differently. I mean, there's probably someone out there who likes Unity, whoever that is. And so what I say is, I'm assuming it's still really good on the consoles. Actually, I did ask someone to tell me if they were good on the consoles, and they said yes. But for PC gamers, if you're really stung by Unity and you were thinking to yourself, I'm not getting another Assassin's Creed game, remember how bad that one performed? Well, I just say to you, don't worry about that here. The performance is great. There's no bugs really. I think there's like the odd clunky animation, but you'll get that in any Assassin's Creed game. And so a big thumbs up, a big recommendation to Rogue, and I'll be showing the footage of Rogue throughout the rest of this video. The next story is that Titanfall 2 will be coming for the Xbox One, PC, and the PlayStation 4. So yes, Titanfall 2 will be a full multi-platform release, and this has been confirmed by Respawn Entertainment boss Vince Zampella, as he confirmed to IGN. And my response to this is, well, of course it is. Titanfall 1 should have been for the PlayStation 4. The fact that it wasn't for the PlayStation 4 in the first place is perplexing. Of course, there was a deal behind the scenes where Microsoft paid Respawn to make it exclusive to their console, and at least a console exclusive, because it was also on the PC. But it was just so strange. I remember when I got Titanfall, it was just so odd. It occurred to me that why is this game not for the PlayStation 4? I had just bought a PlayStation 4 at the time, by the way, so I found it so frustrating that I could not play Titanfall on it. There are certain exclusives that would not exist without a publisher support. So if you think about the Halo games, Microsoft is obviously putting a lot of funding in to making sure those games come out, and they come out well. But when it comes to a game like Titanfall, Respawn used EA to publish their game, and Microsoft just came in out of nowhere and decided to pay a lot of money to get it exclusive to their consoles, and yes, the PC as well. It turns out that Respawn actually lost money from that deal, because if they'd have gone multi-platform, they would have made more money from the sales made on the PlayStation 4. That's of course speculation, but it does make sense considering how well the PlayStation 4 has sold. So I think, had Respawn the foresight at the time, they would have not accepted this deal, and Titanfall 1 would have been a PlayStation 4, well, not exclusive, but it would have been for the PlayStation 4 as well. So I think, in hindsight, we see that Respawn essentially made a mistake, pure and simple. So ultimately, yes, I'm very pleased to hear this story, but I think, let's be honest, we all saw this coming. Destiny has been named as Best Game at 2015's British Academy Game Awards. That's the story, and I am very surprised by this, as are many people. Now, I've made my opinion on Destiny known before. What I think of Destiny is that it's a totally solid game. It doesn't really have obvious flaws to it. There aren't technical issues. It goes and flows fairly well, but it feels, to me, ultra generic. It's just a shooter that you can play with other people, but hey, you can do that in most now. I don't dislike Destiny, but it is not impressive. I think that's the thing. It's not an impressive game. It's not really a niche game that you can go and play something different on. It just feels like another shooter where you're killing aliens. It's got some unique things to it, but those things aren't always in your face. They're not always affecting the gameplay. So, the fact that you can run around in an MMO style is quite cool, but hey, you can do that in an MMO. And the shooting doesn't actually, to me, it doesn't feel quite as satisfying as the Halo games. So really, what I want to say is I'm really surprised that Destiny was named Best Game. I can imagine it winning minor awards, maybe Best Art Design, Best Graphics, maybe. Definitely not Best Story, but Best Game. How on earth did it win Best Game? It just doesn't seem right to me, especially when you had so many other great games that came out in 2014. I think Destiny has created this smokescreen for its hype, this almost illusion. Because the hype got so intense, people still believe it's a really awesome game. I mean, okay, if you play the game and you think it's great, good for you. I mean, I don't think it's bad if you enjoy it. And I had a friend I was talking to, and he was absolutely convinced that Destiny was great. He hadn't actually played it though, he'd heard the hype, and he kept talking to me, oh, can I please come around and play Destiny? Can I please come around and play Destiny? So I was saying to him, it's not as good as you think. It really isn't as good as you think. And he would not accept that as an answer. He just kept asking me. And I thought, okay, I'll let him see it and play it. Maybe he will like it. And then he played it and thought, what? This isn't fun. This is just generic. As I said, generic. That's what people tend to say. It's a generic shooter. And people do not believe it because the hype was so intense for this game. It's like, how could it have not been that great? How could it have not? Especially with the budget as well. I do sometimes wonder what that budget went on. But the thing is, I get the sense that the people who do these awards, because remember this is like the British BAFTA, I get the sense that they're people who probably don't really play games anyway. They're just trying to fit with popular opinion, and they've got the sense that Destiny was really well received, but it wasn't really well received. I mean, it wasn't hated, but it definitely fell short of the hype. But they've been taken in by this smokescreen that the hype before the release generated, and that's why it's ended up in best game, because I don't believe that anyone could have played every game that came out in 2014 and thought, yes, Destiny is the best, because Destiny isn't a bad game. It wouldn't be top 10 worst games of 2014. As I say, that's important to stress. I don't think it's a bad game, but calling it the best is, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but some opinions are harder to justify than others, let's just say that. Also, I just want to quickly tell you the other ones that were nominated for Best Game, and you can just laugh at how Destiny somehow managed to beat them. So, Monument Valley, Mario Kart 8, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, Dragon Age Inquisition, and Alien Isolation. Now, first of all, I'm surprised Far Cry 4 wasn't even mentioned. As you may know, Far Cry 4 is my favourite game of 2014, but how did it manage to beat Shadow of Mordor or Dragon Age Inquisition? Or really, I'd even go as far as to say as I would have chosen Alien Isolation over Destiny. I would have been less surprised if Alien Isolation won. Or even Mario, I don't know, I'm leaving out Mario Kart. Mario Kart 8 was great. I'm surprised that. It's just, okay, I can't really speak to Monument Valley. I haven't actually played it, but I'd say every other game that went up against was better. Okay, so that concludes this episode of the Weekly Roundup. If you have anything to say on the topics covered, do let me know in the comments below. As always, people, thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.